We were halfway through dessert when Colin cleared his throat. That's always his tell when he's about to say something rehearsed. Zoe reached for my hand across the table, her nails still wet from the salon, and gave me the kind of smile people use before delivering bad news with soft words. Mama Colin began, "We've been thinking about what's best for everyone." I paused, fork in midair. The candle on my little slice of vanilla cake still flickered. The server had sung an off-key happy birthday not 5 minutes ago. I thought maybe they were going to offer to help me with yard work, but Zoe placed a colorful brochure on my plate. It's brand new, just opened. It's quiet, safe, and right by the Riverwalk. I looked down. Riverbend Active Living Independent Senior Suites with community values. Colin added quickly, "It's not that we don't want you around Mom, it's just, with the baby coming and Zoe's mom having health stuff. Space is tight, and we already talked to the realtor," Zoe said, still smiling. "They said it's filling up fast." I blinked. The noise of the restaurant dulled. My name was printed on the gift bag beside me. There was tissue paper, a card, and underneath it all, a flyer for a place that wasn't home. I pushed the cake away. They kept talking about transition time, about downsizing, about how I deserved to relax. But I couldn't hear them anymore. Just the clink of forks on plates and someone laughing at another table. When the check came, Colin grabbed it with a proud little flourish. "Dinner's on us tonight," he said. "Happy birthday." I nodded. My throat was tight. I folded the flyer in half and slipped it into my purse without a word. Then I smiled back at Zoe. It was the same smile I used when I decided something quietly and didn't plan on telling anyone just yet. I let myself in with the key they hadn't yet asked for back. The house still smelled faintly of birthday candles and takeout. I wasn't planning to stay long just to pick up a sweater I'd left behind in the laundry room. But the moment I stepped past the front hallway, I stopped cold. Boxes. 3 of them labeled in Colin's handwriting, "Mom, closet, Mom, books, Mom, Misk." They were stacked neatly by the garage door like they'd been waiting for me to notice. My photo albums sat on top, still unwrapped, with one corner of a family Christmas picture peeking out. The frame was cracked. I turned toward the guest room. The door was open, the bedding gone. The walls, formerly a soft sage I chose myself, were now half covered in a peachy beige. A paint roller leaned in a tray on the floor. Zoe appeared in the hallway, ponytail high, holding a coffee mug that said, "Mom Fuel." She gave me that same smile again, the one that meant, "This is already decided." "Hope you don't mind," she said, nodding toward the room. "We figured we'd get a head start while you were out." Head start on what I asked, though I already knew. Just the paint today. My mom's stuff gets delivered on Friday. Colin came in from the backyard, wiping his hands on a rag. "It's just space, Mom. Don't take it personally. We're trying to keep things moving so it's less stressful for you." I nodded slowly. I didn't trust my voice yet. My coat was still on. "I only came by to grab a sweater," I said. They didn't offer to help me find it. Back in my car, I called June. Her voice was soft, steady. "Do you know what I found in the garage?" I asked. "I have a guess," she said. "They boxed everything." There was a long pause. "Not asking you was personal," June said gently. "Even if they pretend it wasn't." I didn't cry. I just drove. Straight past the turn to the rental listings. I toured the studio at noon and signed the lease by 2. It wasn't much, bare walls, a window that rattled, and a kitchenette that barely fit a kettle and a pan. But the rent was low, and I didn't have to explain anything to anyone. The landlord handed me the keys with a shrug and said, "It's yours." I made one last stop before leaving for good. The house was quiet when I let myself in. A pile of Amazon boxes sat unopened near the entryway. A baby swing leaned against the wall. My name wasn't on anything anymore. I walked to the kitchen, placed my key next to the fruit bowl, and left a small note beside it. Nothing poetic. just what they needed to know. The porch light switch sticks. The pantry door swells in summer. The upstairs shower still leaks if you run the dishwasher at the same time. That was it. I didn't open the fridge. I didn't check the closets. I didn't knock on Colin's office door. I just left. Back at the studio, I unpacked the few things I'd kept: 2 plates, 1 saucepan, a single pillow. I heated up a can of soup and sat on the old camping chair I'd used years ago on school field trips. It creaked under my weight. The soup was watery. Still, I finished it. I kept waiting for a text. Maybe just a, "Did you find everything?" or "Thanks for the note." Something. But the only sound that night was the buzz of the heater and the soft tap of tree branches against the window. No one called. No one noticed. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my phone vibrating against the countertop. But it was just a pharmacy reminder. I turned off the alarm, set the kettle to boil, and stared at the empty second mug beside the sink. Then I tucked it away in the cabinet. I wouldn't need it. That afternoon, I called June and asked if she knew any good financial advisors. Something in her tone changed. "You're ready, aren't you?" she said. I was. The file was still in the same beige folder it had always been in, wedged between old insurance policies and my husband's discharge papers. I'd nearly forgotten about the investment account we opened in the early 80s, back when we had dreams bigger than our budget. He called it our quiet backup plan. I had never touched it, until now. The login still worked. I had to answer 2 security questions and dig through an old email account to verify access, but there it was, blinking on the screen in black and green more than enough. I stared at the number for a long time. Not a fortune, but enough to make a decision without begging anyone's approval, enough to stop settling, enough to make sure I never had to sleep in anyone else's shadow again. I printed the balance sheet, slipped it into a clean envelope, and took the bus to June's that evening. She poured 2 cups of coffee and asked no questions as I slid the paper across the table. Her eyes widened, then she smiled. So she said. Raising her mug, what now? I didn't lift mine. I just looked out the window at her tiny herb garden, the one she'd kept alive through 3 rough winters and 2 knee surgeries. "They didn't want me in their house," I said quietly, "so I'll buy one of my own." We didn't say much after that. We didn't have to. That night, I sat cross-legged on the floor of my studio and sketched out a budget. Nothing fancy. Just a clean, safe place. Somewhere I could hear myself think. A house with quiet mornings and no judgment behind the coffee cups. I circled a few listings, wrote down some agent numbers. Then I paused, and next to each one, I wrote a question. Do I want to live here or just be away from them? The difference mattered. I'd spent too many years choosing safety over joy. But this time, I would choose both. By morning, I had narrowed it down to 3. One of them had a sunroom. The house was modest, 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, and a crooked little gate that stuck if you didn't lift it just right. But the sunlight poured through the kitchen windows in the morning, and the living room faced a maple tree just starting to turn. I signed the deed on a Thursday. The realtor congratulated me and slid the keys across the desk with both hands, as if handing over something sacred. I took them with a quiet nod and walked out without fanfare. It wasn't a victory lap. It was a return to myself. That weekend, I visited my attorney's office and made one more change. Colin and Zoe were removed from the will. No confrontation, no announcements. Just a clean revision on paper, sealed and notarized. The new documents listed my name, my house, and my instructions clear and calm. June was the only person I told. She didn't ask why. She just nodded and passed me a pen to sign the final page. When I unlocked the front door to my new home that evening, the air smelled like dust and old wood. I dropped my purse on the kitchen counter and stood in the middle of the empty living room, listening to the way the silence settled around me. Not heavy, not lonely, just mine. I took my time unpacking, one box each day. I didn't rush to hang anything on the walls. I wanted to learn the space first, where the light moved, how the floors creaked, which drawer stuck in the bathroom. Colin texted once that week. Just a thumbs up emoji, no words. I didn't answer. Zoe sent a forwarded article about joint housing and multi-generational living. I archived it. I no longer needed to explain myself. That was the gift of finally having something no one else gave me. By the following weekend, I had a welcome mat, a set of house keys with no copies, and a coffee mug that read, "My name is not Grandma Roommate." The front porch needed sweeping, but I didn't mind. I had time. I found the shoebox while unpacking the last crate, labeled Misk. It had been taped shut for years, tucked behind winter coats and tax returns in the back of my old closet. I sat on the floor, cross-legged, and peeled back the cardboard flap, like I was opening something sacred. Inside time. Receipts for field trips and dental work. Grocery lists with check marks beside apples. Peanut butter in those juice boxes Colin liked when he was 7. Notes written in my own handwriting, reminders to call the school, reschedule a doctor's appointment, buy new cleats before Saturday. A tiny soccer medal lay near the top. I turned it over in my hand and remembered standing in the rain, watching Colin sit on the bench for most of the game, cheering anyway. At the very bottom of the box, wrapped in a scrap of tissue, was the silver bracelet. I'd meant to give it to Zoe the year they got engaged. It had belonged to my mother-in-law. Nothing fancy, just a slim chain with a clasp that always caught if you rushed. I remember thinking it might make Zoe feel like part of the family. Back when I thought I'd still have one, I held it in my palm for a long time. Then I stood up, walked to the drawer where I kept my padded envelopes, and sealed it inside. I wrote in black marker across the front. Not to be passed down. It wasn't a spiteful decision. It was a clear one. Some things don't belong in the hands of people who treat you like a placeholder. I placed the envelope in the back of my closet behind the safe box and the winter scarves. I didn't want it visible, just reachable. Later that night, I made a small pot of chili and watched the steam curl up from the bowl. No one was coming over. No one needed serving. I ate slow. I finished every bite. The next morning, I opened my laptop and searched local trusts for women over 60. It was just after 5 when I heard the knock, 3 short raps, then a pause, then one more. I didn't move right away. Something in me already knew who it was. When I opened the door, Colin stood there on the porch, hands in his pockets, eyes darting toward the welcome mat, like he wasn't sure if he should be standing on it. Behind him, Zoe waited at the edge of the driveway, arms crossed, phone in hand. "Hey, Mom," he said, trying a smile. "We heard you bought a house." "That's great. Can we talk?" I leaned against the doorframe. He glanced back at Zoe before continuing. "Zoe's mom took a fall last week. Hip, maybe her back. She's staying in the hospital for now, but we're out of room. It's just temporary, a few weeks tops. We were hoping, no, Ma." He blinked. "No? The locks have already been changed," I said, evenly. He stared at me, trying to process. "You're serious," he said, voice low. "I've never been more serious." He took a step forward. I didn't move. Behind him, Zoe pretended not to listen, but her whole posture was waiting. "We wouldn't be a burden." He tried again. "You've got the space." "I mean 2 bedrooms. You're here alone." I didn't answer. He looked past me like he could see through the walls back into the childhood home. He thought I might still be willing to recreate on demand. "Mom, we didn't mean to hurt you. You said you were fine with the retirement place. We thought you thought wrong," I said. We stood there, the cold settling between us. For a second, he looked like the boy I used to carry inside after he fell asleep in the car. But that boy never boxed up my belongings without asking. Colin finally nodded once and stepped back. Okay, he said. Okay. I watched them walk back to the car. Zoe didn't look at me. I shut the door, locked it, and poured myself a cup of coffee. The next morning, a name I hadn't heard in years lit up my phone. The call came mid-morning just as I was clipping dead leaves off the basil pot on my windowsill. The name flashed on my screen, Sandra, my late husband's sister. We hadn't spoken in over a year. I considered letting it ring, but curiosity got the better of me. Marlene, she said, voice tight, with the kind of concern that already has judgment behind it. Colin called me. He says you kicked them out, with no warning. I took a slow breath. I didn't kick them out, Sandra. I just didn't invite them in. There was a pause just long enough to make her point. Well, he's upset. Zoe's mother's in the hospital, they've got the baby, and now they're scrambling to figure out where to go. I'm sure they'll figure it out, I said calmly. They're resourceful when they want to be. Sandra sighed like she'd been rehearsing it. You've changed, Marlene. You used to be so accommodating, I offered. Quiet willing. She didn't answer. I leaned against the counter. I haven't changed. I've just stopped saying yes to people who only come around when their plans fall apart. But family helps family. I helped them, I said. I raised my son alone after Robert died. I babysat when they couldn't afford daycare. I moved out of my own home so they could bring in someone else's mother. And not once did they ask how I was doing. Marlene, come on. It's just a rough patch. No, I said. A rough patch is a flat tire. This was a decision. Repeated once. And now I've made mine. Sandra was quiet again. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentler. You always were the dependable one. It's just strange seeing you draw the line. Strange for you, I said. Necessary for me. I ended the call before it could turn into a sermon. Then I deleted her number just in case. Outside, the wind was picking up. I went to the closet and pulled out the envelope with the bracelet inside. It was time to move it somewhere safer. The call came just after sunset. I almost didn't pick up when I saw Zoe's name, but something told me to answer, maybe curiosity, maybe closure. Her voice was small, thinner than usual. Marlene, please. Just for the kids. They don't understand why you won't let us stay. I said nothing. She waited a beat, then asked, You still have the bracelet, right? The silver one. You promised it to me after the wedding. There it was. I didn't reply. I simply ended the call and placed the phone face down on the table. No message. No goodbye. The envelope had been sitting in the back of the drawer for weeks untouched, but never far from reach. I pulled it out, held it one last time in my hands, then walked to the small safe I'd installed in the coat closet. The combination clicked into place, slow and steady. I laid the envelope inside, next to the folder labeled Trust Pending. That night, I emailed my attorney. The subject line was simple: Finalize the trust. The body of the message was shorter than a grocery list. Use the funds to establish a grant for women over 60. No co-signers. No family required. Just proof that they've been left yet are still standing. It was a quiet kind of vengeance, not aimed at Colin or Zoe, not even at Sandra, but at the pattern, the one that said women like me are soft landings and spare bedrooms and fading names on utility bills. I wasn't building this to prove anything to them. I was building it so the next woman doesn't have to unpack her worth in someone else's garage. The bracelet wouldn't go to Zoe. Not now, not ever. It would stay locked away, not as a keepsake, but as a reminder. Some heirlooms don't get passed down. They stop with the last woman who refuses to be used. I poured myself a glass of water, sat by the window, and watched the porch light flicker on automatically. Tomorrow, I'd sweep the porch and change the mail lock. The morning air was cooler than expected. I sat on the back porch, fingers wrapped around a warm mug of coffee, watching the steam drift upward like a soft ribbon. The maple tree had turned fully gold. It made the yard feel quiet in a way that wasn't empty, just calm. My phone buzzed on the armrest beside me. Colin had tagged me in a photo, him, Zoe, and the baby at some pumpkin patch. The caption read, "Family Night." I didn't click. I just tapped the remove tag button and set the phone face down. They were building their image again, one where I didn't exist, unless it suited them. But I no longer needed to take part in the performance. A knock came from the side yard gate. It was Janice, my neighbor from 2 doors down. She held out a small basket of tomatoes from her garden, fat, red, imperfect. The kind you could never buy at the store. "I had extra," she said. I thanked her promise to return the basket and meant it. We didn't talk long, just enough to feel known, not owned. Once she left, I stepped down from the porch, walked across the gravel path, and closed the gate behind her. The latch clicked once. I added the padlock and turned it until I heard the soft clunk. The sound didn't feel like shutting anyone out. It felt like keeping peace in. I walked back through the kitchen, past the clean counter and the safe in the coat closet, past the envelope where the bracelet still rested untouched. I poured the last of my coffee and leaned against the frame of the open back door. Somewhere down the block, a leaf blower started up. I smiled at how ordinary it all was. I'd bought this house with money. No one knew I had signed a deed. No one was invited to witness, and locked every door with keys I didn't plan to share. And for the first time in years, no one was asking me to move.